Hey guys, welcome back to Herp Husbandry. This week's video is going to be on how I got started in herpetology and keeping reptiles and amphibians as pets, and also on how they are helpful for the environment that they live in the wild. Just what they do, both positive and negative effects on just the ecosystem. Today's video is actually was actually suggested on my Facebook page. If you have any suggestions for a video, you can go to my Facebook page. I'll put a link to that in the description. And on the Facebook page, you can just leave whatever suggestion you have. And I may end up, I will probably end up doing a video on that. So, if you have a suggestion, don't be shy to put it on there. So yeah, I'm going to grab my gecko so I can hold a gecko while I'm doing the video, and then I'll get started. So my first experiences with reptiles were when I was probably maybe 5 or 6 years old. I would always, of course, catch living in the country, I would always catch frogs and toads and keep them as pets for a couple days and then release them. And then I also caught the one time a baby painted turtle and kept that for a couple days, and that was really cool. I always liked the harder to find reptiles. Like where I lived, painted turtles weren't very common. In fact, reptiles in general weren't very common just because they just weren't we lived in it was the country still, but there were more people than like farmland. So we only had about an acre of land, and we were really excited when we found a baby painted turtle. And then I also would catch snakes at my grandma's house. I would usually, when I was younger, I would find a snake and then call my uncle over to help me catch it because I didn't want to get bitten. And he'd help me catch them. They were mostly DK's brown snakes and garter snakes, but the one time there was a milk snake, and by that time I was catching snakes on my own most of the time, but it was an eastern milk snake, which looks sort of like a copperhead if you don't know. But it's not a copperhead because there are no copperheads where I live in New York. And I thought it was a rattlesnake. I had never seen a rattlesnake before, and when I stepped on its head gently, that's how I used to catch the snakes. I would hold down its head with my foot, and I wouldn't put enough pressure to injure it, but I would hold down its head with my foot, and then I would grab its neck with my hand and keep it from biting me. Now, if it's a non-venomous snake, I just grab it because I don't really mind if I get bitten by a non-venomous snake. And where I live in New York, there aren't, the only venomous snakes are rattlesnakes, and there's not very many rattlesnakes where I live. I've never seen one in the wild ever, even when I went to South Carolina. So, and I'm probably not going to see any here in the wild, just because they're not very common. I'm very close to Buffalo, and there's not really very many reptiles, very many venomous snakes at least near Buffalo. So I usually just catch the snakes, and if they bite me, they bite me. But back then, I would just step on the head gently to catch it, to keep it from biting me, and then I'd grab its neck. But I stepped on its head gently, and its tail started like vibrating. And so I called my uncle. I screamed that it was a rattlesnake, and I was wrong. It was a milk snake. He said it was a corn snake, but he misidentified it. He said it was a corn snake, but there are no corn snakes in New York, so I knew it wasn't a corn snake, but it was close enough to where I knew it wasn't venomous, and so I didn't have to worry about being bitten by it. But that was very exciting, and I've always liked milk snakes, regardless of the subspecies. This one was an eastern milk snake, and they're not very colorful, but I still really like eastern milk snakes. Although like the further south ones and like Sinloan milk snakes, I think those ones are the coolest milk snakes ever because they're just so colorful. But I like milk snakes in general. And the ones that are up here are mostly just brown, but they're they're still really cool. But anyway, yeah, I would catch snakes at my grandma's house, and then finally I started, when I went to parks and saw water snakes, I would just jump into the water to catch water snakes. I remember the one time I was riding my bike on our street, and we live on a farmland area, and there was this farmer's drainage ditch for his fields when I was riding my bike, and I was checking the drainage ditch for toads, frogs, anything, and I saw a little baby painted turtle struggling in the duckweed to get under the water, and I didn't let him get under the water because I just jumped into the water and caught him. I was probably really stupid to do it because the water, farm water, is just absolutely disgusting. It's the drainage water from all their chemicals and pesticides and manure, so it's absolutely atrocious smelling, and you have to really scrub yourself with soap like 3 times in the shower in order to get the smell off. It's absolutely terrible, but I caught the turtle, and that was really all that mattered. I've always been into reptiles ever since I knew that they existed. And then the first time I ever saw a lizard was when my cousin brought a green anole home from Florida. He had the green anole in a critter keeper that didn't allow it to climb at all, no heat light, no UVB. It was just at room temperature with whatever sunlight he got through the window, which UVB does not come through glass, so he didn't have any UVB and probably died. When he died, it was probably due to partially to MBD, and then also because my cousin lost interest and stopped taking care of the green anole. But I was hooked, and I was 7 at that point, and for 2 years after that, I was begging my parents to let me get a green anole. And then finally, we were at Salvation Army the one day, and there was a 20-gallon tank for $15. It was right after my birthday, so I had money, and I asked my mom if I could buy it, and she said, yep, I could buy it, but she was not going to guarantee that I was going to be able to put anything in it. But lo and behold, I ended up getting a leopard gecko after learning that you cannot keep a bearded dragon in a 20-gallon tank. I was 9, so yeah. But I ended up getting a leopard gecko, and that is the leopard gecko's tail. Hang on. She does not like to do anything I want her to do. So right now, I want her to just crawl into my hand and let me do a video of her, and here she is. But will she let me do it? No. That is Lynetta, and she is my first leopard gecko / reptile I ever had, and she is still doing really well. She is about 3.5 years old now, or at least I've had her for about 3.5 years. Probably about maybe 4 years old, almost. I'm not sure her exact birth date, but she's still doing really well, and I've actually even bred her, and she has been an outstanding breeder for me as well. So she's doing really, really well, and I learned a ton in those 2 years, enough to where I still say that I was old enough and I knew enough to get a leopard gecko when I was 10 years old. So I got my leopard gecko in April of 2019, and she's been doing really, really well ever since then. And I guess one thing turned into another, and I got another leopard gecko a little later on. I don't remember exactly when. It was February. I think it was February of 2020, or maybe of 2021. Yeah, I think it was 2021. Anyway, she was a subadult by then, and she never really tamed down as well as Lynetta did. So I just leave her in her tank and take care of her and everything, but she's not really handled very much because she just gets really stressed when I do that, and I don't like to stress her. So I have her now, and I also am breeding feeder crickets for my geckos, and I also have bred, so far I have 2 baby leopard geckos from Lynetta here, and I have 6 more eggs in the incubator. I mean, one of them's not doing too well, and I think it's going to end up dying. It's covered in mold, and it's dented, but it's still in there, and it's still candling red, so I'm going to say it's alive for now, and hopefully it ends up hatching. But, so that's, I've just been doing a ton of reptile stuff ever since I got my first leopard gecko, and it's been hard for me to convince my parents because my parents have had nothing to do with reptiles ever. So my mom is still very much against snakes in the house, and my dad doesn't want to get very many more reptiles. But my mom has shown that she has some interest in a hognose snake. She saw a hognose snake at a reptile expo, and I think she thinks they're a little cute. So maybe I'll be able to get a hognose snake, fingers crossed. But so my parents don't really like reptiles that much, so it's I'm not able to just go out and buy whatever reptiles I want whenever I want, especially because if we're moving, which we may end up moving, so if we are, then it's going to be kind of hard to move with 10 reptiles. So, I mean, as it is, I'm going to have, like, I already have 4 leopard geckos, and I'm going to have some more pretty soon here, so there's not really any good reason why I should get leopard geckos right now, and there's some good reasons why I shouldn't, I guess. So for now, I'm not going to get any more reptiles, at least in the foreseeable future. But who knows? If I can convince my parents, I'm getting more reptiles for sure. And someday I'm going to get more reptiles. I've just, ever since I knew what reptiles were, I've just been absolutely all into reptiles. And so I got started as just a little kid catching frogs and toads and then snakes, and then now I still like to catch frogs and toads and snakes and lizards whenever I'm in South Carolina, but I've shifted more towards keeping them more than catching them, and I want to continue to teach people on how to take care of them so that maybe they can get a leopard gecko or a bearded dragon or something. And I also want to I'd never want to stop getting reptiles because they're so awesome, and they're just really amazing creatures. And how I really got started with teaching people on how to take care of them was I've seen, first of all, my cousin Zanol died within a year because of improper care and because he lost interest and didn't really care enough to bring the gecko to a rescue or something like that. And then also when I was in the store buying crickets for Lynetta here the one time, actually a couple times this has happened, there have been people who have been looking at all the reptiles, just looking at them saying, oh, that one's cool. I asked them what they were looking for, and the one person had said they were looking for a lizard to give to their son, which is fine. If they're good to take care of the gecko if the son or when the son loses interest, then sure, get the kid a gecko, but you're probably going to have to take care of it because most kids aren't capable or probably will lose interest after a while with geckos, and you got to make sure the gecko is not being mistreated. But so they were looking at different reptiles, and I asked them what one they were considering the most, and they pointed at the $30 baby green iguanas, which, if you know much about reptiles, or green iguanas rather, you know that they can get huge, 6 to 8 feet. Females getting more to 6 feet, males to 8 feet. So you really want to be really careful when you're considering getting a green iguana. So I told them that that's probably a really bad option for them because most 10-year-old kids aren't gonna take care of aren't gonna be able to tame a baby green iguana enough to where it's going to be a friendly adult 6-foot green iguana. And also, parents probably don't know what they're getting into when they buy a foot-long baby green iguana. So I just told them, and then told them about the leopard gecko, and then they ended up buying a leopard gecko, and I'm sure that they think they made a great choice because the leopard gecko doesn't get very big, it's a very easy to care for pet, and it's not very demanding. But that's happened a couple times, and there have also been people who have just taken absolute terrible care of their pets, and the best way to keep that from happening is to teach them on how to take care of the pets properly in the first place. And Lynetta is crawling off of me, so I have to grab her. So That's why I do my website and YouTube channel for the most part. And then also because I want to, with my reptile stuff, when I breed my geckos, I want to have a place to sell the babies and whatever. But that's only the part where this is my hobby too. So when I have things to sell, I'll sell them. But this is mainly to educate other people on how to take care of them properly. So yeah, that's how I got started in reptiles, like my interest in reptiles, and then also how I got started in teaching people how to take care of reptiles as pets, and the whole herp husbandry thing, and all that. So yeah. Now that I've explained how I got interested in reptiles and keeping them as pets and all that, I'm going to just explain like why they're so helpful to the environment and why they're so important. So leopard geckos, just for an example, their diet consists of bugs completely. They're opportunistic feeders, meaning that they will eat anything that's live and big enough for them, or small enough for them rather. So although they're capable of eating pinky mice and, well, yeah, that's really, other than bugs, that's really the only thing that they're capable of eating, that they will eat. Although they're capable of eating pinky mice, that's not really something that they eat very often. They will eat them in captivity, especially females that have a lot taken out of them because they've just laid eggs or something. In fact, Lynetta here, just the other day, I fed her a pinky mouse because she had just laid eggs. It was her 5th clutch, and I figured she needed a little bit of weight, fast. So, I gave her a pinky mouse, she ate it, and that was her meal for that day. It was a fast, easy meal, and it was really high in fat that she definitely needed. So they will eat pinky mice occasionally. It's not a very nutritious diet for them, but in Lynetta's case here, she needed a lot of weight really quickly because she had laid 10 clutches of eggs. Sorry, not 10 clutches. She had laid 10 eggs, of 2 eggs in a clutch and 5 clutches. So she needed some weight put on fast because that took a lot out of her. So I gave her a pinky mouse, but that's not really a big part of their diet, both in captivity and in the wild. So in captivity, they should eat mostly crickets or dubia roaches. In the wild, they'll eat just any bugs that they can find. So in the wild, they keep the insect population down, but they also when they poop, their feces are of course go as fertilizer for different plant matter and all that. So they're helpful for the environment. It's a very small way that they're helpful, but it adds up. And they also Lynetta's crawling down again, so I gotta grab her. But there's no negative impact on the ecosystem that they have. So they're really just entirely helpful, although it is a small way. But other reptiles are even more helpful. For instance, larger constrictor snakes in the United States, I'm not talking about large, like Burmese pythons that are invasive. I'm talking about the native, large for the snakes in the United States, constrictor snakes, like racers, rat snakes, and king snakes. They are also very helpful, but they're helpful in a bigger way. They are very big rodent eaters. That's their main diet, is rodents. So they're very helpful for getting rid of pest rodents. Not only that, but king snakes are actually immune to the venom of pit vipers, and so they actually eat pit vipers on a regular basis. It's really amazing. You can look at YouTube. There are plenty of videos of king snakes eating copperheads or cottonmouths or rattlesnakes. They will fight with the pit viper for a while. Pit viper's main defense is its venom, but the venom is completely useless against the king snake. So the pit viper really has no advantage over the king snake, except for that the pit viper is heavier bodied than the king snake. But in the end, the king snake almost always wins, unless it's a small king snake and a large pit viper. But that's not very often that happens. So very, very often, She's fine. It's just a couple inches. Very often, most of the time, the king snake eats the pit viper, and of course, you don't want pit vipers in your backyard if you have small children. If you have king snakes around, you definitely want to keep them around because not only do they keep your rodent population down, but they also will keep your pit viper population down. And most people don't want pit vipers in their backyard. And to try to kill the pit vipers with chemicals, although that can work, you'll also kill a lot of other animals that you don't need to kill and that are actually helpful, like lizards. And that can also upset the balance of things. If pit vipers are going to die, maybe you let the king snakes have them if you have king snakes. If not, maybe you get somebody who's licensed or at least experienced to relocate your venomous snake from your backyard to maybe like a wildlife refuge where the snakes really belong. So the larger constrictor snakes that are native to North America, are very helpful for getting rid of the rodents and venomous snakes. But then also the smaller snakes will either eat some smaller snakes like corn snakes will eat rodents, but then most of the smaller snakes like DK's brown snakes, garter snakes will either eat or hognose snakes will either eat frogs and toads in the case of garter snakes and hognose snakes, or they will eat worms, snails, and slugs in the case of both garter snakes and DK's brown snakes. DK's brown snakes specialize in snails and slugs, just like hognose snakes specialize in toads, and then garter snakes will really eat both of them. Fun fact, actually, hognose snakes have rear fangs that allow them to puncture toads when the toads puff up, to keep the toads from blocking their throat on the way down. It's actually really fascinating. They're specialized for eating toads. And then other small lizards will actually help the environment in other ways than just eating a lot of bugs. Fence lizards actually have an enzyme in their body that when they are bitten by a tick that is carrying Lyme disease, they will not only not be able to get Lyme disease, but the enzyme will be in their blood that the tick drinks, and then the tick will actually be cleaned of Lyme disease. It's really fascinating and really amazing that they can actually help sterilize the ticks. Although it's not exactly sure that we're not exactly sure how helpful they are, because a study done in California shows that actually when western fence lizards were removed from a vacant lot, the tick population actually went down. So they may actually be at the same time helping ticks to survive, but they are at least cleaning the ticks, which is very, very helpful because, of course, you don't want to have ticks, especially ones that have Lyme disease, and that they will also eat ticks. So they're very helpful for keeping at least the Lyme disease down. So that's really how reptiles and amphibians are really helpful to the environment. They either eat, most of them eat lots of pest animals, and some of them will eat downright dangerous animals like venomous snakes. Of course, invasive animals are very bad for the ecosystem and are one of the leading causes of extinctions, but native animals in their native habitat are actually really good for both the animals and for the ecosystem, and for you if you live in that area. If you don't want pit vipers in your backyard, maybe you don't kill the king snakes. Let the king snakes go, and they'll probably get rid of most of or all of the pit vipers. That said, you definitely want to get rid of pit vipers if you have small animals, small children in your that are going to be playing in the backyard. So maybe you, if you see a pit viper, get it removed professionally, but don't touch the king snakes, because of course they're helpful for the exact same reason. So that's why they're so important for the environment, and why you should probably just leave them alone for the most part, instead of trying to get rid of them and harming them in other ways. Thanks for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, And don't forget to check out my website at herphusbandry.weebly.com. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And like I said earlier, if you have a suggestion for a video you want me to do, make sure you go to my Facebook page and let me know exactly what video you want. I'll put a link, like I said, I'll put a link to the Facebook page in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.